Quick note from Freese. If anybody's got any consequences for their business that they'd like to talk to Freese law firm on, they've got a coronavirus helpline, 0845 404 4111 for a free consultation. So that's in the message bar at the side. But the focus of today's talk is to have a chat with Stuart Crook of Weller's Accountants. So Stuart, if you'd like to come in on screen. Good to see you.
Afternoon, everybody.
Yeah. Busy week?
Yeah, busy couple of weeks.
Never had anything like this to prepare for, not even tax returns in January. Not that you do that many of those.
No, I steer clear of that.
Brilliant. So you've got a few slides to go through. Anybody has any questions, if you're familiar with the tools on the right-hand side, if you want to raise your hand, ask a question in the message box, or even come on screen and ask Stuart your question direct, it'd be great to see you if you'd like to do so, or if you're a little bit shy and want to put your question in the box, please do so. But it'd be great to get a bit more visibility of who's with us. So after you then, Stuart.
So I'm going to share these slides now. Hopefully everybody can see the slides now. If somebody just lets me know that
yeah, I've got it, Stuart.
Excellent. Right. So effectively all I've got is some headings on here. If you've got any questions, then we'll collate those at the end, just making as we go through, or as Richard said, just use the chat function. There are effectively the key areas of government support that have been announced. The idea behind, in a general basis, is that those measures have been brought in to try and, as much as possible, create some sort of norm in the finance world. And I think we need to all bear that in mind when we look at some of the elements that I'm going to go through. If we go on to the next slide here, the key one that was announced first is obviously the business interruption loan scheme. So I would advise everybody to be contacting their bank. That's where it will be administered. That's where the money is coming through. We've already seen some clients getting agreements with their bank in relation to some sizable sums. There is a list of hoops, if you like, to jump through. They're asking for general information, as you would expect with any form of loan. If anybody is interested and wants to start planning for that, then to me, that's one of the things that you can be doing in the short term. They're looking at financials, they're looking at cash flow forecasts if you've got them, they're looking at business plans if you've got them, and they, in particular circumstances with particular banks, they've actually got free online tools to do some of those forecasts. So the action point from that one really is to speak to your bank manager, get into conversation with them as early as you can. On to the next one. The HMRC payment plans are in place. This helpline here is a special dedicated helpline. So this has been set up for PAYE, for corporation tax, and it would include, in the PAYE elements, it would include CIS, so Construction and Industry Scheme deductions. You ring this line, you need to get your tax references handy to speak to the HMRC people on the other end of the phone so that you can defer your payments and set up a payment plan. There's always been a time to pay arrangement facility in place with HMRC. From our experience so far at the moment, it looks as if HMRC are being pretty reasonable in terms of how they are assessing all the cases that are there. If you can't get through, I am suggesting that you keep hold of the payments at the moment. You try to get through. You make a note if you can't get through, so that if, as it was at this time of the month, you have to make PAYE payments. If you're trying to get through and you can't get through, at least you've got some evidence to support why you didn't pay it at that particular point. The reason I didn't mention VAT when we talked about the time to pay arrangement is that deferral of VAT has been announced as being automatic. So any payment that's due from now until the end of June automatically is effectively going to be deferred, and that's going to be deferred until 2021. The key action point for all of the businesses at the moment in respect of this is that where you've got direct debit VAT payments set up, you need to cancel them. HMRC have confirmed this. They effectively need you to speak to either your bank or go onto your HMRC portal and cancel those payments. I would suggest that you're better off doing that via your online banking, making sure that that VAT payment doesn't come out, than leaving it to the government to make sure. Income tax, and we'll talk a little bit about self-employed. So as far as income tax is concerned, the impending deadline is the payment on account on the 31st of July 2020. That again will be automatically deferred until the 31st of January 2021 at the moment. The self-employed, as it stands at the moment, I can completely understand the pressures and the anxiety that the self-employed have, but I also understand the issues that the government have in terms of administering this. So unlike with the employee scheme that we'll talk about shortly, the government do not have the ability to assess what self-employed person earns and to make sure they've not got multiple self-employments as well as perhaps employments as well. They don't have the ability to pay them. I've seen some draft legislation that seems to suggest that this is coming imminently and could even be today from the Chancellor. So I think if there's any way of slightly putting self-employed minds at rest, then it's worth explaining. It is very complicated, and hopefully there should be something coming shortly on that one. Employee planning. I note Richard mentioned about Keith and the free helpline, and I would imagine that the HR side of that has obviously been a massive part of what they've been doing over the past couple of weeks. From our point of view, in terms of advising you on action points, it's worth reviewing your contracts with your legal advisors. It's worth speaking to them about holiday provisions. The example that I would use in this scenario would be with everybody potentially working from home. You need to consider their holiday requests, because if over the next 3 weeks everybody is working from home and not taking holidays, then when it comes to the final quarter and hopefully we're in a position when we're all back out there, we don't want all of our workforce away on holiday. So check in with Keith and making sure that all of the provisions in relation to the contracts have been considered is really important at this stage.
Just to jump in there, Stuart, it's Stuart Ellison at Freeze who's the contact, and if anybody needs his details, I can send those through to you.
Great.
Keith, I'm sure you do a fine job of answering any of those sort of legal questions, but he's a design man.
All right. Linked to that, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but the statutory sick pay provisions, they're obviously all in place, and there's a link at the end of the slides that's talking about this. If somebody is sick, then all the rest of the provisions obviously flow after that. So if they're sick, and you need to follow the contractual arrangements in relation to sick pay. Right, the job retention scheme. At the moment, we have about 3 paragraphs to work for getting all of this in place. Again, relating to the legal side of things, there are precedents in relation to redundancy. The idea behind this job retention scheme is trying to make sure that employers keep employees on and don't make them redundant. Redundant obviously being a finite solution. This job retention scheme is trying to encourage employers to keep employing their employees, and effectively is promising that they will reimburse this 80%. There's a lot of confusion around what this 80% actually means, and there is nobody out there that knows the definitive answer at the moment in relation to that. So there are a lot of questions around that, and it might be at this stage, if there are any particular questions, that if you put them in the chat, we can go through. In particular, one of the questions that surrounds this is, can somebody carry on working while they're on this job retention scheme? And the answer is absolutely not. There are potentially voluntary opportunities and things like that, but this is about people that literally cannot work and are having to stop work. I've had a couple of questions. So where you've got potentially 2 employees, could you split the job 50-50? So one of them does half a job and the other one does half a job, and then you claim job retention. Again, I don't see that working under the arrangements that are being proposed. In terms of practical action points for this one, which I think is the most appropriate thing to do at the moment, it's about identifying your workforce, identifying who within that workforce potentially needs to be furloughed. Furloughed is the description of this particular type of employee, a furloughed worker. Identifying those, liaising with the payroll team or the payroll provider so that you can identify them on the payroll system, ready for when the HMRC portal, which is where we're going to have to report all this, is open and ready to go. It does backdate. So if you've had to effectively furlough somebody from the 1st of March 2020, then you will be eligible for this scheme. There are people running March payrolls at the moment that are concerned about that. And the other thing about this furloughing of employees is trying to ensure that going forward from the 1st of April, you identify the wage and the cost that's going to be reclaimable. 1st of April being when we're expecting the money to start coming through. At the moment, we believe this is going to be based on the wages that they received in February. There's going to be some form of calculation on this, some average, probably akin to the statutory maternity, paternity and sick pay calculations. So having that information to hand in relation to what your employees got in February, so where you've got 0 hours contract workers and people like that I think is where those figures are going to come from. Business rates holidays. So yesterday the government released the advice and the process on this to the local authorities. This is all going to come through the local authorities because they're the ones that deal with business rates and they're the ones that have all of your information. As I say, I've seen the guidance that went to the local authorities in relation to that, and this should happen automatically. So people should be getting notifications on this. As far as business rates are concerned, obviously it's worth looking at your direct debits and making sure you're in control, contacting your local authority, perhaps explain to them, look, you need to manage your cash flow, you're cancelling the direct debit or the standing order, you'll pay them online, you're in control of that, which seems to be a sensible step to take at this point. Again, HMRC grants are going to be dished out via the local authorities. It will be linked to the business rates. That's where the information is. That's where they've got all of your details. According to the guidance at the moment, this should be automatic. I think as time goes by, it might be that there will be some form of claim or information that's required, but the guidance at the moment is that you just got to wait and see. We're getting a lot of calls from people asking how they get their hands on the grants. It appears that it's going to be based on the rateable values of properties and therefore business rates that you've been paying recently. So keep an eye out for that. If you don't pay business rates, again, there is talk of a grant up to a maximum of £10,000. It's still likely that you're registered in some respects. So it's still likely that with a local authority, that's where this is going to come through. There are trade associations as well, so anybody that's part of a trade association, I would encourage you to have a look at what's available there. I know in the hospitality industry in particular, there are some trade associations that are looking at grants for businesses and for employees. So that's another area where these grants for potentially the smaller employers need to be looked at. General sort of cash flow management and credit control, obviously a complete nightmare at the moment with everything that's going on. The key thing about this is just getting a handle on your online banking, understanding what payments are due to go out, understanding what payments are due to come in, and having a look at those particular elements. The suppliers, the idea behind...
Just a sec, because we just did have a question from one of the guests before we move on to a new subject. Is that okay?
Yes.
It's Michael Pauly asking, if a new employee has started in March, do we know yet if the furloughing provisions will still be available, i.e. is there a cut-off date for starting employment?
So it was anybody that's been furloughed since the 1st of March, and it, as I say, it's likely to be based on the February wages. So there are a lot of people that are in limbo in that respect. So people that are perhaps due to start new jobs and have obviously left previous employments. So they're in between two stools, as it were. At the moment, there's no detail on whether or not they'll be caught within the opportunity to furlough. So it's, I would be guessing if I answered that question at the moment, I'm afraid.
Okay, thanks very much.
That's all right. So yeah, in terms of supplies and stock, the overall thing about putting together all the measures that the government have is that they're trying to make sure that particularly the smaller suppliers, if you're getting your money in your money from the government in relation to the business loans, if you're getting the money in hopefully in April to do with the staff furloughing, etc., that the rest of the business can carry on to a certain extent, because the money obviously needs to be generated to get that going. So being in control of your suppliers, your stock, your credit is going to be really important to support all the other small businesses that are out there going forward, not just potentially hoarding cash to for a rainy day. Try and do as much as you can to keep things moving. Insurers, so I don't know if we've got any insurance brokers on the call, but certainly Richard has got some contacts that he can let you have in the B4 network. I am told at the moment from most brokers that business interruption insurance, particularly for the hospitality industry, is not paying out. You need to check with your insurance broker whether any other element of your policy would qualify. See what the broker has to say about this. It may be that legislation comes in from the government to actually designate COVID-19 as something that is within business interruption in the future, but at the moment I'm being told that that's not the case, and I know there's a huge amount of lobbying going on at a very high level from the hospitality industry to try and ensure this is the case. But
just posted in
action points, contact your broker, contact your insurer.
Yeah, I've just posted in Spencer Insurance. So Joe Spencer, who many of you will know, will hopefully be able to answer some questions on the insurance side of things. So that's in the message box now.
Excellent. Profit extraction sounds like a strange one to include in here, but there'll be a number of people that are on tax efficient profit extraction plans, salaries and dividends and all of those sorts of things. Speak to your accountant, work out what you need to do over the next 3 months to look after yourself personally as well as your employees. There are a number of things that need to be considered in this area, but it all depends on the individual's circumstances. It is one of those areas that perhaps is being overlooked a little because of all the other priorities that are there. But if you take all of the measures that we've mentioned so far into account, you then need to step back and think about that personally if you're running your own company, and how it's going to then impact on you as well. Perhaps not that important at the moment, these last 2 points, audit and accounts updates. So it is important that you keep your records up to date, bearing in mind what we've mentioned about the banks and the information they're looking to have. If you are a larger company and you have an audit coming up, or in the middle of an audit, then there's going to be some massive implications on how that audit report is signed off, which has knock-on effects for your business. So again, conversations with the auditors, the accountants, bookkeepers on how you keep all these things going in a remote way. Any form of accounting record can effectively be maintained electronically. That's HMRC's guidance. So we don't need sort of hard copies of anything. You just need to make sure, again, from an IT point of view, that everything's properly backed up and maintained for the 6 or 7 years that HMRC requires. Anybody worried about the IR35 legislation that was coming in April, that has been kicked into the long grass until next year. So again, we don't need to worry about that, because I know that particularly there were a lot of freelancers and contractors that were running around changing their status at this time, and that obviously could have had a huge detrimental effect on them in the current circumstances, which is why obviously I've mentioned that in relation to the COVID situation. These here are the key links that we've been using at the moment. So the support for business tax helpline, you can actually log into that and you can sign up for updates. So as and when updates are made to those sites, you will then get an email notification. It's been very useful for obviously for us in terms of how things are changing. We're expecting a lot of changes in relation to the furloughed employees to come through over the next couple of days. I'm expecting something on self-employed today or tomorrow. This business support website is very good. It, as you can see, it summarizes a number of the key areas. Unlike the COVID page, it goes into a little bit more detail. So again, where you've got maybe one or two elements on the main page, you can see in a bit more detail what's going on those websites.
Just a quick mention of another website to keep an eye on if people can't see it in the message bar. Peter Brown's just mentioned the Growth Hub. So www.thegrowthhub.biz for updates and webinars, is very supportive. So thanks for that, Peter.
Yeah. If anybody's got any questions, obviously feel free to ask them now. I think the main point really is that there are short-term objectives, there are medium-term objectives, and there are some long-term objectives. There are things that you can plan for now, but you can't actually do anything about. As a generation of control freaks who want information now, we're obviously looking for the most up-to-date information as soon as humanly possible. You can imagine that there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes to try and get that information out to people. Hopefully this has just been a quick summary to answer some of the key questions and highlight where you can get some more support from the various different business authorities.
Chris, plenty on all government support updates plus financially managing your business through the crisis in this blog post. So Chris has posted a link to the Wellers website.
Yeah, we're trying to update the website and the blog post to update all of these links as things come in.
Brilliant. And Lorna's just put a note in to say we're going to share your slides if that's okay with you.
Yes, that's why I've added all these links at the end so that anybody can get hold of those and click through the links.
And also the video will go on to the V4 Live page with all the other videos that we've run, and we'll add to that over the course of the next few weeks as well. Brilliant, Stuart. Has anybody else got any questions at all? Silence is deafening. I think you covered all the bases, Stuart, apart from the glaring omission at the moment, which hopefully the Chancellor will address in the next couple of days. I just heard something on the radio about self-employed and where obviously that's an issue that needs to be addressed. What are your personal thoughts? Is that a tricky question to ask?
Yeah, no. The thing about this is that we've all sort of seen various bits that have been leaked, and the idea behind I think a lot of the politics that goes on at the moment is they try and leak things just to sort of sense check them and get the feeling. It looks as if they are going to look at perhaps the last 3 years worth average for self-employed and look at maybe a percentage of that. And I've heard 75% or 80%, and then applying that in the same way that they are doing with the employees. The issue that they have is, who do they pay that money to? Do they try and pay it out to a company or a contractor that then, if you take the construction industry, for example, they then pay that on to the various different subcontractors, or do they try and pay it directly? When you're self-employed, you do a tax return as anyone else does, but you don't necessarily include your bank details. And HMRC don't necessarily retain those details and have an easy way of paying all of these individuals. And you may have somebody who's self-employed and works for lots of different companies, or potentially has multiple self-employments. So, as I said before, it's really difficult to see how they're going to be able to manage that, which I think is why the default position was obviously to use the benefit system and that £90 a week. Again, that they might look at using that system and topping that figure up as a way of doing it. But again, that's where we get into the sort of speculation and guessing over to how they might facilitate it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Stuart. I think that's pretty well everything. I really appreciate your time, and maybe we can get you back in a week or two's time just to give us an update on as this picture changes hour by hour, day by day. But thanks very much. If those slides will be sent over to you, if I can just draw everybody's attention to, on the B4 website, we're trying to provide as much information as we can from around the network. So the page that you've got on your screen at the moment is updates that we're sending out on a daily basis. Colin's our COVID-19 expert, so Dad's posting a daily update from bullet point update from government. So that comes through sort of the next morning. So that goes on to those pages, and then we've got the general updates from everybody else that we're posting through the website and through our social media platforms. B4 Live, we're just about to, I don't know if we've done it yet, but we're just about to launch a designated link for this. So it's a go-to link for everybody. We've got upcoming webinars live posted on there. Just register on the black button or the white button there underneath James White that Keith's pointing to. Then if you scroll down, you'll see, and that will take you through to Eventbrite, so you can register and you'll get the link sent through. Others coming soon, and then you've got the previous webinars that we've held. Just to have a catch up, again, click on the white box and you'll be able to see the webinars that we've run. So we'll be adding Stuart's to that later today, hopefully. But no, I appreciate everybody's time, and again to you, Stuart, and the team at Wellers for fantastic update on advice. And thanks to everybody. Do get in touch with B4. If there's anything that we can circulate for you, the team are working hard behind the scenes just to try and keep people informed, but be good to have your involvement. But we haven't got a webinar, but for tomorrow we are going to circulate a link for just more of a general brainstorming about things that we can be doing in the business community to support everybody. So if you'd like to join that, do drop me an email and I'll send you an invite. And I think on Friday we've got James White on sales. I'm pretty sure that's from memory, but thank you very much, and good luck. Stay safe and see you soon. Cheerio.